Welcome to the latest Wax Ecstatic Pack Break. I am your host, Matt Sammon, and this week we're going to be taking a look at some of the, I've called them oddball sets, but that's not really right. Off the beaten path is what we're going to go with here. And these were all cards that were suggested by listeners. We're going to be looking at the Topps big sets from the 1980s, late 80s, and early 1990s. The Sporting News Conlon collection, 1991, 1992 here, and also the Swell All-Time Legends Baseball Greats, much like both of these other sets released in the late 80s and early 1990s. And these are, I believe 1990 was when these were released. Do I have a date here? Well, I believe it's 1990. But anyways, we'll go through all of those. And again, those were all listener suggestions. In fact, two of these three sets came from listener donations. I had a listener send me about 20 of the big cards here. And I do have a pack of Topps Big, but actually I don't have a pack. It's my son's, and I just don't feel like opening up a 10-year-old's pack of baseball cards. We also had the Conlon packs were donated, and again, a listener suggestion for the Swell cards, so I was able to pick those up on eBay recently. Now let's first look at the Topps big cards, and I remember buying a few packs of these back in the day, but as you probably know now, I was not that big on anything that was outside of the mainstream when it came to cards. Certainly the first 2 or 3 years that I started collecting in the late 80s. Basically stuck with the base sets. So while I bought a few of these packs, they just kind of ended up in a box and I didn't really care much for them. And I kind of wish I did now. And, you know, here you can see Barry Larkin. And we've got Gary Carter here. Let me get that glare out of there. Nolan Ryan, I remember having this card because at that time Ryan was with the Rangers, but here with this 1988 big card, pictured with the Houston Astros. That intensity, I remember that so well in that mugshot of his. Ozzie Smith sliding into second base here. Got Robin Yount in action. Jim Rice with the Green Monster right behind him. Paul Molitor legging out a pop-up. Ricky Henderson looking so Ricky here. So, like I said, I'm not going to go through all of these, but, again, thanks for the submission. And something that I didn't notice until I was having a conversation with the listener who wanted me to talk about these is this was actually a tip of the cap to the classic 1956 Topps set. And I never really noticed it. Certainly as a kid back in the late 80s, I didn't really notice it because I didn't have any cards from 1956. But upon further review, this you could say was one of the first throwback sets, if you will, in baseball card history. The first, relic set, if you will. But it certainly had a flair of 1988. And the 89 and 90 big cards were similarly designed. But let's take a look at the 88 here, where you have the headshot of the player on one side. You've got an action shot on the other. You have this kind of Saved by the Bell paint swatch right there and the player's name. And then where you get to see the real similarities are on the back here. And you may be going, well, how is this similar to 1956? Well, let's take a look at a 1956 Topps card. This is an Eddie Matthews card I picked up at a show not that long ago. And you can see, down to the finest detail, it's practically the same card. You know, the baseball card and the baseball stamp, I should say, and the logo and the number and the Topps logo, the information of the player at the top, the comic strip-like presentation of narrative here, and then even down to the stats. Take a close look at the stats here. You've got the previous year, you've got life, and even all the way on the right side there, look at that, the breakdown of stats for defense as well. And then when you look at the front, now you see the similarities as well, where you've got the headshot, the action shot in the background, the player's name prominently featured. The biggest difference, of course, is 1956 Topps, they were still coloring black and white photos, or in some cases, basically making paintings of the players and their headshots, while in 1988 and beyond, color photography was very easy to get a hold of, color film that is, so they utilized that. But we're going to talk a little bit about the big set in Topps, why it is still somewhat popular these days, still relatively easy to get a hold of, but also the odd fact that while people just bemoaned the 1989 Bowman's set, there are a lot of similarities with the 88 Topps big set, as well as 89 and 90, and the Bowman sets. And again, this was really one of the first archive cards, if you will, or a Topps Heritage card, a good, 15 years before Topps Heritage came around. So we'll talk about the big cards. We'll also talk about the Conlon collection here, and I'll actually open these packs up here. So let's open up 1991 here. A pretty good stack of cards here, 18 cards. As the label says, oh good, the same plastic that they used to wrap these sporting news magazines in back in the day. Hang on, let me perform some surgery there. There we go. So we'll be talking about some of these players on the program this week. So we've got Ted Lyons of the Chicago White Sox. Jake Dauber, National League MVP for 1913. Look at that Brooklyn uniform. I believe that was when they were still the Superbas. I'll have to look that up here. Or they might have been Dodgers by 1913. John Stone of the Washington Senators. Pinky Higgins. I love the nicknames from those days, too. Pinky Higgins, most consecutive hits, 12 back in 1938 with the Red Sox. We got the powerful lefty here, Carl Hubble of the New York Giants. Ivy Wingo of the Cincinnati Reds. Bob Smith of the Boston Braves. Roy Johnson, Yankee outfielder. Lloyd Brown of the Cleveland Indians. Heine Groh. Of course, this was back in the day when people were just called Heine, which is awesome. Oh, look at that. Babe Ruth. All right. Boston Red Sox pitcher, 1916. We've got Earl Whitehall of the Tigers. Will Seymour. Rube Wahlberg. That was a common name back in the day, Rube, and I'll explain why later. It was a nickname, though. Adam Komorowski of the Reds. You got Ed Roush here of the Giants. The Professor, Casey Stengel, seen here with the Boston Braves. And Flint Ream of the Cardinals. I will quickly open up, and this is a much easier pack to open. They put the little thread of plastic down the back. So the 1992 edition, a little banged up here. Nicknames: Iya of the Detroit Tigers. Specs Toporser, great specs. Rogers Hornsby. We've got the old Crow, Joe Cronin. Pete Scott of the Pittsburgh Pirates. Grover Alexander, one of the best pitchers at the turn of the century. Lou Finney of the Red Sox. Art Fletcher of the New York Giants. Waite Hoyt of the Yankees. Wes Farrell of the Washington Senators. Interesting question back from 1992. Why not in the Hall of Fame? Hack Wilson, one of the more interesting characters in baseball history, and also one of the players that the character Jimmy Dugan was modeled after, along with Jimmy Fox in A League of Their Own. Of course, Jimmy Dugan played by Tom Hanks. Ernie Vick, Frankie Hayes, Jesse Haynes, and Smokey Joe Wood. Love the nicknames from those days. So we'll talk a little bit about the Conlon collection cards. And then the swell cards, too. And I'll just open up a couple of these packs here. But these should be fun, as they kind of went along the same vein of the Conlon collection. There's a big desire for early 20th century baseball players and stories and knowledge in the early 90s, and we'll talk about that. Let me take a look again. I believe this was 1990. Yes, 1990 there, CMC. All right, so we've got Ralph Branca, Brooklyn Dodgers, Manny Sanguillen, the Pirates, Gil Hodges of the Mets, good old Campy of the Oakland Athletics, Davy LaRoche, Le Grand Orange, Rusty Staub. Oh, got to have a checklist card, of course. Christy Mathewson, Ed Charles, Mr. Utility, and Bud Harrelson. It's an interesting collection of players here, right? Let's see what else we got in these other packs here. Frank Thomas, not of the White Sox. No, he was one of the early Mets. George Foster. Clete Boyer, one of the best third basemen of the time. Clyde King of the Dodgers. The old lefty, Steve Carlton. Bill Mazeroski. Mambo, the late Bill Mambuquette. Gibby here, Bob Gibson. Boy, he's looking fierce there. Bill Robinson, then with the Phillies, and Eric Soderholm of the Twins. All right, we got enough time. Let's rip through these other two packs real quickly here. Fritz Peterson, Lenny Randall, Charlie Keller. We got the Big Train, Walter Johnson, Eddie Lopat, Larry Sorensen. Boy, he just looks stoned out of his gourd there. Ed Roush, Henry Aaron, love it. And the early Atlanta Braves days, I was going to say early 60s, late 60s Atlanta Braves uni there. Jim Northrup of the Tigers, and Sal Magley, the Screaming Skull, as Jim Bouton called him in Ball 4. And last but not least, we've got Rusty Staub again. We've got Checklist again. We've got Christy Mathewson. Well, we can see the sequencing here. Good. Ernie Banks. Johnny Podres with the Padres. You normally see Podres with the Dodgers uni on. Billy Sample. Ralph Halk. And Rocky Calavito. So some fun throwback cards from the Swell People. Again, the 1990 version. You've got some fun throwback cards here too from the Sporting News with the Conlon collection. And then you have current cards, or in 1988 they were current cards, but with a throwback nod to 56 Topps. So we'll discuss all of this in our next podcast. I'll be coming away noon Eastern this Friday, June the 5th. Keep an eye out for it and follow us on Twitter at Wax and Gum Stains. I'm your host, Matt Sammon. Thanks again for watching this Wax Ecstatic Pack Break. We will see you next time.